Hey gamers! If you're a fan of horror games, especially the classic ones, but you feel like modern horror games just don't give you that same thrilling vibe, you're not alone. Why is it that the old school horror games had a unique charm that today's games often lack? Well, in this video, we're diving deep into this topic to uncover the secrets behind what made those classic horror games so special. But before we jump in, if you enjoy this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to support the channel's growth. Let's get started and explore this chilling journey together. Let's start with the first problem. Modern horror games are way too predictable. Picture this, you're walking down a long, dimly lit hallway. There's eerie music, a flickering light, and maybe a creaky door in the distance. What happens next? Yep, a monster pops out, loud noise blares, and boom, another jump scare. Over 70% of surveyed players in 2023 said they could predict scares in horror games before they happened. Why is this such a problem? Because predictability kills tension. The best horror makes you feel unsafe even when nothing's happening. It's the anticipation that gets under your skin. Think about Silent Hill 2. That game didn't spoon-feed you scares. Sometimes, nothing happened, but the atmosphere was so oppressive, so eerie, that you were terrified anyway. Modern horror, on the other hand, feels like it's playing by a rulebook. Spooky hallway? Check. Monster sound? Check. Scare? Check. It's like the games are afraid to take risks. But guess what? Real fear doesn't come from following rules, it comes from breaking them. Let's move on to reason number 2, the overuse of jump scares. I call this the horror game shortcut. Jump scares are easy. They're quick, they get a reaction, and they're super simple to design. But here's the thing, they're also lazy. Good horror sticks with you long after the game is over. A jump scare? It's like a cheap thrill. Sure, you scream, maybe spill your drink, but 2 seconds later, you're fine. Compare that to something like Amnesia, The Dark Descent. That game didn't need loud noises or sudden movements to terrify you. It made you scared of the dark, scared of the unknown. It turned every corner into a potential nightmare. On average, modern horror games have 40 to 60% more jump scares compared to classics like Silent Hill or Fatal Frame. And the worst part? Jump scares lose their power when they're overused. The first one might get you. The 10th one? You're just annoyed. It's like eating candy for dinner, fun at first, but eventually, you just want something substantial. Let's talk about graphics. Modern horror games are obsessed with looking good. And don't get me wrong, I love me some 4K textures and ray-traced lighting. But here's the problem. When developers focus so much on visuals, they forget about atmosphere. Take Resident Evil Village. Stunning game, but were you scared of Lady Dimitrescu? Or were you, distracted by her height? Raises eyebrows suggestively. The point is, modern games are so busy showing off their visuals, they forget that not seeing something is often scarier. Older games had to rely on creativity. The fog in Silent Hill wasn't just creepy, it was a workaround for hardware limitations. But that fog became iconic because it made you feel isolated, like the world itself was suffocating you. Modern games? They show you everything, and sometimes, the unknown is far scarier than any detailed monster. Let's talk about power, specifically, how modern horror games give you way too much of it. Horror thrives on vulnerability, but when you're armed with flamethrowers, rocket launchers, and enough ammo to take down an army, fear takes a backseat to action. Take Resident Evil Village. Great game, but Ethan Winters feels more like an action hero than a scared dad. Or Dead Space Remake. The atmosphere is chilling, but when you're slicing enemies into pieces with high-tech weapons, it's hard to feel truly terrified. Now compare that to games like Outlast or Alien Isolation. No weapons, no way to fight back. Just you, hiding in the dark, hoping the enemy doesn't find you. That feeling of helplessness? That's where real fear lives. Modern horror games lean into power fantasies to appeal to wider audiences, but in doing so, they lose what makes horror, well, horrifying. Fear isn't about control, it's about losing it. Finally, let's talk about the elephant in the room. Modern horror games lack originality. I mean, how many more haunted asylums, foggy forests, or creepy little dolls do we really need? These settings and tropes have been done to death, and they're losing their ability to scare us. And monsters? Don't get me started. Every game seems to have the same lanky, faceless humanoid creature, or worse, a slight variation of a zombie. Horror should thrive on surprise, but when everything feels recycled, it's hard to feel scared. If I've seen it before, it's not frightening, it's just predictable. But here's the good news. Indie horror developers are stepping up where the big studios are falling flat. Games like Description and The Mortuary Assistant are breaking the mold with fresh ideas and unique twists. These games don't just reuse the same old formula, they innovate and deliver unforgettable experiences. Even better, some games are diving into cultural horror, like Detention and Devotion, which pull from Taiwanese folklore, or Fatal Frame, rooted in Japanese ghost stories. These stories bring new perspectives and fears to the table, making them stand out in a sea of sameness. The bottom line? Horror needs fresh ideas to thrive. Let's move beyond the cliches and embrace creativity, because when horror surprises us, that's when it truly terrifies. So, do you agree? Are modern horror games all bark and no bite, or am I just getting too brave for my own good? Let me know in the comments, and while you're down there, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Trust me, you don't want to miss what I've got coming up next. Until next time, stay scared, but only if the games can actually deliver.